Goeiedag, mijn naam is Evan, ik ben migratieprocureur hier in Amerika en ik wil je helpen om immigratiewet te verstaan. Now, a lot of questions have come my way concerning the recent conviction of Julius Malema, the effeminate, dancing, racist communist in South Africa, and how this conviction will impact or could impact your refugee or even asylum interviews. For those of you who are Afrikaners or other people of in minority groups in South Africa who are trying to take advantage of the refugee program, or here in the United States attempting to go the asylum route. Before we get into that, please remember to like, subscribe, share. Consider becoming a member of the channel if you aren't already. It really helps the work that I'm doing here in publishing daily or as close to daily videos as I can about the Afrikaner Refugee program and the conditions in South Africa concerning Afrikaners and the pending, if not already in full force effect, genocide against Afrikaners and other people of white European descent and other ethnic minorities in South Africa. So, a lot of people have asked me, Professor G, now that Malema has been convicted, will this impact my ability to articulate a well-founded fear of future persecution because the government has actually done something? And first, before I even get into the ins and outs of this, let me say that I'm very impressed that this question came up because so many of you are taking this program very seriously, as I've told you should. And as I gave you the advice, you can't just lackadaisically go through this program, even though we all know 100% that you face persecution, that things are very terrible in South Africa for you, and that all of this can be and has been proven not only by yourselves, but by the U.S. government and accepted by the U.S. government. That's why this refugee program exists, that you still shouldn't go into this half-hearted. You still should be able and practice articulating your well-founded fear of future persecution or the persecution you faced in the past. You should familiarize yourself with the law and what it actually means, because persecution is more than discrimination. You can't say or use the term discrimination. It's not discrimination. Persecution is more than that, but also that it is directly connected to a protected ground, in this case it being your race. It's not enough to say, I was attacked and someone hurt me. God forbid these are terrible stories, but you have to say I was attacked and someone hurt me because I am an Afrikaner or because I am a minority. There has to be a nexus, a connection from the persecution you experienced to that protected ground. Or if it's fear of future persecution, you have to say I fear persecution, extreme levels of conduct, threats to life and liberty because I am an Afrikaner. Simply saying I fear crime or I fear a failed state is not enough and does not a refugee program or an asylee make, right? So we understand that. So when many of you brought this up to me, remember the other part of the requirement is that this persecution is coming from either the government or someone the government is unable or unwilling to control. And a lot of you, and this is why I was so impressed, said, hey, Professor G, now that the government has actually done something against Malema, they've convicted him of a crime, can the argument now be made that the government is actually doing something to help stop the persecution of Afrikaners, other people of white European descent, and other minorities in South Africa? And that is a damn good question. And how might that impact how you are going to articulate, or what if you're asked the question, right? Because remember, the USCIS refugee and asylum officers, they know what they're doing. They understand the requirements, and they're going to ask you guiding questions and see what you answer, or the narrative you tell, in order to determine whether or not you merit a refugee program or asylum. Now, I will tell you that for asylum seekers, how difficult it is, yes, I think this will have more of an impact, even though you're going to say the same narrative that a refugee interviewee would do. It's the same thing. And I'm sorry it is that way, but asylum is just so exponentially more difficult, and they look at things differently even though they shouldn't, but we all know this. I don't want to get into that too much. But the narrative is going to be the same for both of you. So here's what I want to say. For the most part, generally speaking, does this conviction undermine the element of the government or someone the government is unable or willing to control? The short answer is no, absolutely not. It doesn't undermine it at all. Because he was convicted of a gun charge. He was convicted of discharging a firearm in public, a danger to public safety, all of that. He has never been convicted or held responsible, except for that one recent civil, and y'all corrected me, and again, because the terminology is different in U.S. courts and in South Africa, that he was found civilly responsible for hate speech recently, right? But as far as the broad brushes painted, he has never been held accountable for chanting, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. Hell, he did it right after he was sentenced and came out and did that stupid little dance. And realistically, comrades and commanders, there's a whole bunch of children, right? And we know this, socialist, communist, racist children. But it's entertaining to watch from thousands of miles away, so I'm not trying to laugh and at it. I am laughing at it. But I don't want to undermine the fear that you guys have of this group, because they're terrifying, because they are acting like big racist communist children with the ability to get away with murder and genocide indiscriminately because the government doesn't hold them accountable. But for the most part, what you would say is, if you were asked, hasn't the government convicted him? Yes, but of an unrelated crime. Something that is not related to his chance for killing the Boer, his calls for killing of white people, although not yet, and him never denouncing that he would never call for the killing of white people. You just said, I'm not going to call for the killing of white people yet. All of those instances still hold true and are still valuable, and they still make the point that the government is either unable or they're unwilling to do anything about his calls for genocide. Also, you have to remember, too, that it's more than just the man. It's the organization he created. That this EFF, and someone sent me this screenshot yesterday, where it talks about the EFF, that come January, the revolution will come. Well, what's January? His sentencing, right? So he's even made the claim, and the EFF is making the claim, that come January, come his sentencing, if he is sentenced to prison time, then things will get exponentially worse. And for a group that is calling for the genocide of Afrikaners and other white people inside Africa, it clearly shows that even if the government is trying, they're unable. If they made the argument that, hey, the government's trying, they convicted him. Yeah, but they can't control the EFF. They can't control these people who are out committing farm murders and calling for genocide and all of that. So really, for the questions that are asked, one, I'm impressed that you put this together and you asked this question, because I think it's a valid argument, valid point. And again, for all of you out there, just be prepared. Be prepared to answer questions, right? So if the question comes up, well, didn't the government do something? Didn't they just convict Malema of a crime? Yes, but an unrelated crime. And they have never held him accountable. The government has never held him criminally accountable. Again, not for hate speech. I'm okay with hate speech. You want to be a racist bigot and you want to do your little frou-frou dance and all of that, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. Hate speech is fine. It's deplorable. It's obnoxious. When I say fine, meaning that in a free liberal society, you are allowed to say horrible things. But threats and calls for genocide and calls for killing white people and all of this, advocating for it and promoting what has become uncontrolled farm murders. And honestly, when we look at the 10 stages of genocide, a pending, if not already in place, genocide against Afrikaners and other people of white European descent inside Africa. So I would argue that it hasn't done anything, and it merely continues to show that the government is unable or unwilling to control him in the areas that it matters for this persecution, which is the calling for the genocide of Afrikaners. So, great question. I'm glad y'all brought it up. I hope this helps answer your question. Just remember that this is, again, will it come up? Don't know. For asylum seekers, it very well may. Like I said, asylum is a different story. Asylum assumes from square one there's nothing and you have to prove it all. At least in the refugee program, President Trump and his administration opened this refugee program to acknowledge first that there is this persecution, although it still puts a requirement on you to articulate that past persecution, which gives you a rebuttable presumption of future persecution, or to articulate a well-founded fear of future persecution. So, again, they're two different burdens, they're two different groups, but I would still give the same answer, that this does not show that the government is willing and is able to control Malema. Rather, it shows that they will pick and choose crimes that have nothing to do with his calls and threats for genocide and punish him for that, if he ever actually even will be punished. And even if he is, that the group he created, which is a major political party with millions of followers who rant and rave about the killing of Afrikaners and other white people in South Africa, that group is now just even more empowered to do horrible things and commit genocide in South Africa. So as always, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you for the next video.